standing on the unceded land of the Caddo Wichita Comanche people. We honor the generations of stewardship these indigenous peoples have given to the water, air, and land. Hi, my name is Tiffany Jackson, and I am the Director of Education for the Bishop Arts Theater Center. We're excited to bring you this interview series with several playwrights who received commission awards for our How to Be project, 10 Plays for Racial Justice. These videos are generously sponsored by our presenting sponsor, the Frederick Loewe Foundation. In 2021, we commissioned 10 Texas-born or based playwrights to pen a script based on Dr. Ibram X. Kendi's best-selling book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. BATC will produce the world premiere of this powerful, brilliant, and deeply moving festival beginning February 17th through March 6th. These performances are timely and have never been more important in the fight for our shared humanity. We are thrilled to hear from a few creative minds behind our How to Be project.
All right. Hey there, Eugene. How you doing today?
Hey, man, I'm good. How are you
Excellent.
doing?
Hey, you know what? I'm alive. That is half the battle at this point.
Blessing, man. You know,
it's a blessing every day. Every day above ground is a good day to me. All right. So, I mean, hey, I want to talk about government cheese, though. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What an amazing monologue. And what an amazing addition to this festival overall and to the How to Be project. I was just really riveted reading it from the get-go, from the jump, caught into this kind of narrative. And I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't seen the play yet or read it, so I won't go too deeply into it. But just what a beautiful arc. If you don't mind my asking, in terms of the play itself, what inspired you to write about the specific subject matter of like the Vietnam War and setting it in that time period? I know civil rights is obviously very much there, but was there a particular reason that the Vietnam War stuck out to you, or was a big thing for you narratively?
yeah. In reading How to Be, one of the major echoes for me, the things that resonated in reading that book was the word assimilationism. And that's what was the inspiration for what this is. It's not the ultimate, but it's right near the ultimate sacrifice in terms of assimilationism. To put on that uniform, to go over and fight and give your life. That's the ultimate assimilation, if you know what I mean. And that's what inspired it in a nutshell. That is what inspired it in a nutshell.
Of course. And regarding the subject of assimilation, it was interesting to me that this was focused really on Betty Lou, the mother character and the matriarch of this family that she's created for herself as she's trying to do the best thing possible for her children. And I know that you said, in putting on the uniform, that is the ultimate sacrifice that you can make, and that really is the ultimate form of assimilation. Is there a reason that you've chosen to focus it in on Betty Lou's perspective rather than her son, who had chosen to don the uniform, as it were?
Well, she can speak to the loss. She can speak to what assimilation cost her. And in terms of an arc for her character throughout this, she talks about her cousin who's on her about it, her cousin who's more radical and Black Panthers or whatever. And
right.
And in a way, this could almost be entitled "How to Be an American." And she, she for America. I mean, that was her whole objective with her kids. The idea of government cheese, to feed them, to nurture them on things that are American, that America has provided for them. I guess that's the essence of what it is. And I'm sort of brainstorming about it now. I wrote this seemed like a minute ago. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, I just love the title "Government Cheese." Like, if there is one like one great hook, it's like, okay, I'm in. When I saw the title, like, all right, I'm in for the ride now. What brought you to Government Cheese? If you don't mind my asking on that title, what inspired that?
Well, well, I ate it growing
Mhm,
up, so I knew people, and I guess people still do, not just the cheese, but the ham and so many other things.
mhm,
But in an interesting kind of way, they really are a part of that systemic racism that's a part of America,
mhm.
and providing for, in a minimal way, if you know what I mean, for, and you can call it social programs or what have you, but they're designed in a way to keep people in a particular place, and that's part of the inspiration as well, is the consequences of that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You're placed between a rock and a hard spot, and with not much other choice,
Mhm,
and there are consequences to that
mhm,
in terms of
mhm.
being able to rise above it.
Right. And in your opinion, this goes, really big thought, big ideas, and everything. In your opinion, has that changed for the better? These kinds of social programs and the kind of uneasy contract that's made between, particularly communities of color who take on kind of government social programs. Has there been an improvement as to the expectation or the kind of assimilation, really, that goes on versus, say, during the backdrop of the time of the Vietnam War and civil rights movement?
I see efforts being made, but I honestly don't know that I can say that 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 much has changed. So much
Mhm,
of what's in government cheese talks about that systemic thing of breaking up the black family, about there's more money in your check if that man is not in the house with you.
mhm.
Those kinds of things, and I don't know that those things aren't still a part of that policy. I hear work requirement for welfare,
Right,
and those kinds of things,
right.
and that these our current Republican
Mhm,
representatives are hell bent to not provide for the needy,
mhm.
and that would include government cheese.
Right. No, the sort of drug test
And
requirements.
welfare programs. They're like, get a job.
Yeah.
And in fact, they're like, no, nigga, get a job.
Mhm,
It's,
mhm.
it's and
Right.
so yeah, that's a part of the inspiration,
Yeah.
is is being stuck in a weird kind of
Right.
way. Yeah.
Right. And that is something that really I zeroed in on was Betty Lou's husband being kicked out, the fool dreamer, uh, as it were. Do you feel that?
And not to cut you off, but
Oh yeah.
even her
Mhm.
son had to leave the house in order
Yes.
for her to be able to have insurance for
Mhm,
herself and for her daughter. And it just speaks to that, once again, systemic,
mhm,
put you in your place or
mhm.
whatever.
The required kind of, you have to fragment your family or else you're not going to get the very little that we're already giving you,
Right,
that we
right.
offer in the first place. It's not even being given; it's being offered at the cost of fragmenting the family.
But you
Um,
know what's even more ironic about this, now that I think
mhm,
about it, Frankie?
yeah.
There are more white people on welfare than there are black people or brown people.
Hmm.
It's just,
Hmm.
that's, well, I just thought that just now, if you
Yeah.
know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I have no reason to hope that government cheese will resonate across some cultural lines,
Hmm. Hmm.
in a way.
And I think for me, there is a kind of resonance in culturally speaking between the different races and ethnicities, in that you are right. There is a kind of requirement or a sacrifice for a lot of people. They're put into these programs where they're stuck in these social welfare programs. They're constantly receiving their check, and they can't make a certain income. I know that people with disabilities can't make a certain amount, or else they lose their insurance from the government. And it just goes on and on, the different kinds of classes of this that goes on. And it feels, for a lot of students that are going through high school, the first thing that they see junior year is the recruitment, is the ASVAB that's there, and then all they see is, hey, you can go to college, the GI Bill, you can do all of these things. Do you feel that there is a sort of kind of pipeline? They talk about, the cradle to prison pipeline that exists in this country for a lot of communities of color. Do you think that also exists and is true of people in these social programs that are then pipelined over to the military as a last resort to be able to get out of the circumstances that they're in.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And there's also a pipeline to the morgue for young black men, you know, from birth to a locker in the morgue or whatever.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's and I'm really, it's really striking. You know, the pipeline to the morgue is a very, very striking image to really think on. Yeah, Betty Lou, you know, kicks out her husband, that fool dreamer. You know, and you get more money that way. If he's not there, if he's not there, and he takes. But he always has his dreams. He always had these dreams that he would never be able to fulfill, and that's why she eventually booted him from the house. Is there something to that when you're considering that she's being criticized by her sister Nefertiti for being part of these programs, for assimilating? Is there some aspect of going into these programs, you're kind of surrendering your dreams, and anyone that holds on to these dreams really cannot belong in these social systems that exist to basically pipeline children into the military and eventually the morgue, as you so very aptly put?
Yeah, man. You know, this is it's a really interesting phenomenon, and historically, even black women have always been situated in what's the word, in maybe an advantaged position compared to black men. Black women have often been the head of the household. Black men have been I mean, you talk about the pipeline, you know, you talk about the pipeline, and that they're always seen as a threat. You know, that's even today, all of America sees a black man or a black child even as a threat. And black women have always provided for the family, from bringing home stuff from the house where they worked, clothes, food, or whatever, and providing those things to supplement. The whole dreaming thing, you know, I guess what I'm saying is a lot of times that's all a black man had available to him, and that's unfortunate. And even dreams were discouraged. If even dreaming was discouraged outside everywhere else, and it's just that castration of black men, if you know what I mean. And as a part of assimilation, she has a choice to make, if you know what I mean. And for the sake of this story, that's the choice that she makes. Right. But it's intended to resonate and reflect about why, how that man is not in the house. It's not necessarily that she didn't want a man in the house. Right. And I don't think it's necessarily that she didn't want that man or his dreams in her house. But America says to her, that's insufficient. And, you know, and if you're going to be, you know, how to be an American, then right. I'm sorry, man, here's your sandwich. Right. You know, come back when you got a job.
Right. No, absolutely. Like, what is there something in your personal life that resonated with you and that you brought into this monologue from Betty Lou and Government Cheese? Yeah.
I mean, because it's infused in everything I put on a page. If you know what I mean. And I'm 68 years old, and I grew up in Texas, in East Texas, and in Fort Worth. And so I grew up in what I call the BI days, before integration. I never sat in a room with a white person until I was in the 10th grade. That's my history in terms of how to be an American. Right. And segregation, you know, the opposite of assimilation. Right. I went to all segregated schools until the 9th grade. All black students, all black teachers. And when I got to that white school, I realized I was smarter than every one of those single white women or white students, because I got love with my learning at the black school, the colored school, as it was called. I was taught a work ethic that I had to do 300% just to get noticed in America. And that was the truth. So I whatever success that I have been able to achieve, whatever I've been able to do has been because of the fact that I was instilled with that work ethic and a love for work. And I was that little cute kid that was always smarter than everybody else. And I'm the one that they sent out to go be a credit to my race. You know, not everybody was given that mantle to you go show them people. So that inspires everything that I write. I saw those signs that said colored only, but I also saw them go down. We used to think that white only drinking fountains had Kool-Aid in them until we snuck and tried some. But that's the stuff that inspires so much of what I write, and in a way, you know, they say hindsight is 20/20. I to have a perspective on the 50s, for example, now and the 60s, that's hindsight. That's a whole new level of clarity for me. That's a whole new level of less mistrust. So I can walk 360 degrees around this idea and not get stuck in that place where I was when I was in the middle of it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So from here, I survived. I got something to brag about.
Right.
I got stories to tell. I can pat myself on the back. And two things there are only two things that I try to achieve with whether I'm writing or acting or directing or whatever, and that's truth. I want to tell truth, and clarity. I want to be clear. I want to be understood, and I always feel that if I achieve those two things, then I've done the work. If you know what I mean.
Right. Right.
I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but I think those things from my past are the things that are infused in everything I write, not just government cheese.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Absolutely. No. It totally answers the question. Absolutely, it does.
But I don't mind saying this to you too. Also, that this was I actually started government cheese 3 decades ago. A theater in San Diego, Old Globe, was doing a remake of a play called "My Name Is Alice." You know that play? It's a bunch of monologues. It's a bunch of monologues by women, and they were doing "My Name Is Alice" 2, and they approached I don't know 5 or 6 playwrights in California. I was in California, to each contribute monologues to that play, and I wrote 3. And Government Cheese was one of them, but it was one of the ones that they didn't use. So, you know, it's been sitting in my computer all these years. And when I read this and got into assimilation and stuff, I said, oh, wait a minute, let me go see if this is. And so actually I yanked it up and looked at it and reworked it. And I think it works so far.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely it does. It definitely works. It definitely works, and really, it approaches the book in a way that you focus in on assimilation, and I believe one of the things that was referred to in the book was that the belief is assimilation is a belief that you're inferior by nurture, whereas segregation is a belief that you're inferior by nature itself. I was wondering on your thoughts on what it means to assimilate, and if there is some kind, if the integration forced, you know, the kind of busing that kind of was created as a result of integrating schools, were there drawbacks? Because you'd mentioned a little earlier that you were smarter than all those students once the integration had begun, when you reached 10th grade, because you've been given that work ethic and you'd been nurtured and loved on by a community that inspired you and really nurtured your academic interests. So do you feel that assimilation and then by then the next step, the integration that has happened um, from the Vietnam War on the civil rights movement, has that been beneficial for the Black community, to your mind?
I guess for some,
Mhm.
you can't legislate morals, man.
Mm.
And this very much is a moral issue, and on a lot of levels. Um, uh, I keep asking you to ask the question because they get long, and I
Yeah,
can't.
yeah, yeah,
I
they do.
haven't
They do get
answered
long.
any of
They do.
those.
I'm sorry about that. I try to phrase it correctly, and I end up doing
I
a
know we're
monologue
playwrights,
instead.
man. We got no
Yeah,
choice. That's the only way we
exactly. But really, has assimilation and integration, to your mind, been a benefit to the Black community? Because one of the things that really struck me was how you said that when it was segregated, you were given love by your community, you were given love by your teachers, by your fellow students,
I
and there's
didn't
a kind of
encounter hate. I didn't
Mhm,
encounter hate on that level until integration.
mhm,
So and I think I echo the sentiments of a number of Black teachers and of
mhm,
Black people from my generation. And segregation, it's that's when I encountered hate.
right,
and
right,
so it wasn't. It was to be desired, but to be a part of that transition generation,
yeah,
I it's a very strange and
right,
lonely place.
mhm,
Uh, uh, I don't care how smart you are,
right,
because you don't just encounter hate because you're Black, but then hate because you're smart,
mhm,
which was never the case for all my life. And to have those kinds of things held against you. I had a white teacher. I never made the first C I ever made on my report card in my life was for a paper on reproduction that I wrote for a biology class in the 10th grade. And the woman accused me of purchasing it. I'm like, woman, why you think I could afford, first of all,
right,
and my mother and my aunt, who's a teacher in
mhm,
a colored school, were up at that school and in that lady's face saying, no, we took him to the library every other day with da da da, and he wrote this. Didn't change anything. Didn't change anything at all. But it showed me the mountain I had to climb.
yeah,
It really did. It really, really, really did. The experiences
yeah,
at that thing. The I wasn't in drama
mhm,
in 10th grade when I first went to that school, and I had done no play in junior high school,
mhm,
and but I wasn't in drama. And I was in that biology class, and the drama teacher came and pulled me out of that class and stood me up in the hall, and she I had great grades and da da da, and she was the drama teacher, and they were doing a play called "You Can't Take It With You."
mhm,
You may know that play. Now
yeah,
the 30s, I think it is. Kaufman and
yeah,
Hart, I think it is,
yeah,
and white
Kaufman and
people
Hart. Yep,
and
yeah,
explosives, and they
yes,
have a maid
yeah,
whose name is Reba.
mhm,
And Reba, they had a Black girl who was a senior uh, uh, that was in the class, and she was playing the maid, but they didn't have someone to play the maid's boyfriend, Donald.
mhm,
So she gave me the script and asked me to read it and think about joining them.
mhm,
I went home, I read it, and the play, Donald is a lazy, shiftless N word. And
mhm,
this was 1967, 68. In
mhm,
fact, Martin Luther King was killed while we were in rehearsal.
mhm,
I went back to that white lady and gave her the script, and I said, no, ma'am, because Black was becoming beautiful.
mhm.
And I was like, no, ma'am, I don't want to do that. And this old white lady leaned over to me in that hallway and she said, you want to see me put one of these white boys up there in blackface? That's when I decided to be an actor, I think,
Mhm.
because I knew up until then, that's what she'd done and that she would do it again. And that was not something I wanted to see myself, nor was it something I wanted anybody else to see.
Mhm.
And the thoughts in my head were, let me see if I can bring some dignity to this.
Right.
Let me see what I can do with this. So I went into her class, man, and it was it was pivotal because in that drama class, it was about to play. You know, when you're the first ones in there, we didn't go to the bathroom by ourselves. You know, because you don't know who's in there. You know, all kinds of things that were part of being the first ones, being the first and the onlys. But once I got into that drama class, it was about to play, and that's all it was about. And they were kindred spirits, I guess is what I'm saying. So it really became a place of refuge for me from the rest of the school, and to be creative. I could be intelligent. I could be creative. I could be Black. You know what I mean? Right. That's just a story, but that's the stuff that my writing comes from, man. That's the fodder from which, there's a well from which all all I write springs. Right. I mean, I sat at August Wilson's feet as an actor. I was with the Negro Ensemble Company for years, and we were snatching Pulitzer Prize winning plays off of people's typewriters and shit and standing them up. You know, a play called The Soldier's Play that I did many years ago. I did everything the Negro Ensemble Company did for 4 seasons. Every play they did, I was in it. And to be working with the Negro Ensemble Company, first of all, doing theater about, by, and for Black people. The ushers were Black. The box office people were Black. The producers were Black. All the designers were Black. It's kind of like growing up in the BI days in Texas in a much more mature and creative kind of way. So, but that's what my journey has been to and they only did new plays. So what I learned about structure, what I learned about character development, what I learned about arcs, you know, all of those things I learned on the fly, on stage, in rehearsal. I tell people all the time that I learned about acting in college. I learned how to act on stage in New York, in rehearsals and things, and how to write. I learned about storytelling. You know, I watched these playwrights like August Wilson develop these plays over time, and to watch the craft at work was a blessing for me. I don't know if I answered your question.
You answered it beautifully. I think we're coming close to the time here, but I did want to ask one more question, because you kind of brought it up and it's really stuck in my head. Do you feel that the arts are a way to kind of reach that better tomorrow that Betty Lou was trying to create for her family, for her children, over something like, say, accepting the government cheese, the social programs, and eventually that pipeline to the morgue that you mentioned? Do you think that the arts are a sort of a different way forward, or a better way, to your opinion?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and in some ways, it's one of the only ways. When what we do has healing power, you know, when we document the human condition in such a way that with truth and with clarity, we can see, and everyone can see. It's the best example lately that I can think of is I did a play on Broadway 2 years ago with Kerry Washington and Jeremy Jordan and Stephen Pasquale, a play called American Son by Christopher Demos Brown. We made the movie for Netflix and nominated for an Emmy last year. If you got Netflix, check it out. It's an important film, and it's in line with exactly what you're asking me here. Kerry plays a Black mother who's in Miami Police Department at 2:00 in the morning because her 18-year-old son was stopped by the police that night, and she's there to find out what happened with him. Now, we did this play in Black Lives Movement. The Black Lives Matter movement was all that they came. The Broadway people that came through there, and the talkbacks that happened. That play took people to places emotionally that changed their lives, that changed their thinking in very many ways. And people stood up in the talkbacks and wept and said, "I've been wrong," and said, I didn't know." And when what we do can be informative in that way, and bring about those kinds of emotional cataclysms in people's psyches. I've seen it happen, man. Now these people may have just had that moment, that public moment, you know, and then
Right.
they go back and start calling everybody that, you know, talking about the black people and doing the things that they've done before. There's probably some of that, but no, it moved them to a different place. And the arts, whether it's music, whether it's theater, movies, or whatever, or Romeo Bearden's artwork, you know, it's when people connect on a human level. I mean, I think that's when art does what you're asking me about, to make things better.
Yeah.
It can clarify, it can justify too. It's it's a wonderful tool. And to answer your question, yeah, I think art has healing power, and that's what I like to do with my art. I like to think I'm a teacher. I taught high school in Fort Worth when I first came out of college, and I substitute taught in L.A. and I taught at Cal State Northridge. I taught at USC playwriting. I taught at I've been a teacher all my life because I think that's our responsibility to each other, is to teach. I often joke and tell people, what if the guy who discovered fire kept it to himself? You'd be some cold right now.
It's the truth. Yep.
but mankind has progressed because what we've learned, we've shared, and we've added to and continued to. And the arts has been a wonderful way for as an educational tool. And it's helping this society move toward whatever its ultimate station is. I have a TV series that I recently pitched, and it's called Uniquity Texas. It's called Unity Texas, but it's about a town that's 7,000 people, 3,500 black, 3,500 white. Railroad running straight down through town, and in the course of 5 seasons. With every night, somebody from the black neighborhood goes over to the white neighborhood, or and over 5 seasons, at the end of 4 or 5 seasons, I think it is, there are no black people in that town. There are no white people in that town. They're all mixed, and it happened and that's where America's headed.
I do want to thank you so very much for your contribution to the How to Be Project. It is a beautiful play. Government Cheese. Everyone should definitely come out and see it. And I also want to thank you personally for the journey that you've made, the kind of struggle that you made, being one of those first people to go forward and to really go into that loneliness. That must have been, I can't imagine the kind of struggle that was, and the kind of journey that was. But I'm so very grateful for the work that you've created for us, for this project, but for everything, really. Thank you for being an educator. Thank you for being that one that took on that burden. It wasn't required of you, but you did it, and that's something that I think is to the benefit of everyone. Thank you for that.